Wonderful. And once the form row as well as alert are set up as separate components, so we can use them all throughout our application, now let's handle the toggle member functionality. Now, why do we have it? Well, first of all, because when we'll register, we want to pass in 3 values, name, email, and password. But then once we want to log in, then we are only looking for the password and email. And like I said, we're controlling multiple things. First of all, we're controlling the input, whether we display it or not. Then second, notice the heading 3, how we control it every time we click. And then lastly, once we submit the form, there's going to be a difference which function we invoke, whether we set up a register request or it's going to be a login request, which again, we don't have the server yet, so we're not going to worry about that right now. So first, let's navigate back and let's see what we need to do. Well, there has to be a function, correct, that controls that. And then since I have the object, like I said, we'll have to do a little bit of trickery where I don't want to replace everything with just isMember and set it equal to the opposite value. I actually want to get the current values, the ones that I have in a state, so those ones all stay the same, and only isMember is going to be affected. And then I'll set it equal to an opposite value. So if it's true, then I'll set it back to false, and hopefully you get the gist. Then, in the return, there's 3 places where we will use that. First, when it comes to a heading 3, we'll set up a condition. I'll say, well, if the values isMember is true, then we display login, since the user is already a member. If it's false, then we'll display register. And the same goes with input, where if the values isMember is false, meaning if the user is not a member, then we do want to display the name because we will send it with our request. And thirdly, there's actually going to be a paragraph, which is going to be right after the submit button. So right after the submit button, we want to create a paragraph. And then instead of that paragraph, first of all, we will have here a button that runs the function. So on click toggle member, this function over here, and there's going to be type. Yeah, that stays the same. There's also going to be a member button. That's the class that styles everything. Yep, we don't care about that. But then the text inside of it, we want to control. Again, if the isMember is true, we set it to register. If not, then it's login. And then the same thing we can do over here with a paragraph. If it's a member, then there's going to be one text. If not, then there's going to be something else. So let's navigate back to the register. And first, let's set up the function. And in my case, I'm going to do it above the handle change. So what we're looking for is const and then toggle member. And then it's going to be a function. I'll set it up right away as an arrow function. Like I said, since we have here a state as an object, we want to go ... So spread out all the current values. And since my state is called values, that's why I'll use values here. And then let's also go with isMember. So that's the one we're controlling, and we want to set it equal to an opposite. We're going to go with values and then isMember. Let's save this one here. And then let's keep on scrolling. And like I said, right after the button, we're going to set up our paragraph. And for time being, let's just go with button inside of it. And then let's add here a type button. And that will be, of course, equal to a button. Then we also want to set up that on click. So every time we click on a button, we actually want to toggle the member. So let's say here, toggle member. And let's also add the styling right away. So class name, and that will be equal to a member -btn. And then lastly, inside of it, let's just say for now register. But like I said, there's going to be a little bit of logic there. So let's save that one. And I do have the register. Now let me navigate to the big screen just so I can see the toggle. So I have here isMember. And once I refresh, I should see my toggle button. And then in the state, check it out. Now, every time we click the button, we are actually toggling the member. So as I'm clicking, notice how the value is changing for isMember. So now we can start using that in our return, where I'm going to scroll up. I'm looking for the heading 3. And let's set up our condition, where we're looking for values, dot, and then isMember. If it's the case, notice here how we're using ternary operator. So if it is a case that the value is true, then we'll display login. If not, then we'll display register. Let's save it. And now notice, once I click, I'm toggling the value. Then we want to do the same thing with our name input, where I'll say if it is false. So if values is member is false, then I want to display that. So only if it is false. So if it is a member, then we're only looking for is email and password. So let's cut it out. Then let's add here and let's copy and paste. So now, since this is false by default, that's why we can see it. But if I'll click it again, notice how actually we're not showing the input. And then lastly, back where we have the paragraph, first I want to add the text. So it's going to look something like this, where we have not a member, and then depending on that, we'll also display already a member. And the same is going to be in the button. So let's start here with our paragraph text. Again, values is member. And here again, I'm going to use the ternary operator. However, we need to keep in mind that the values will be opposite. And if this doesn't make any sense right now, I'll showcase that once we have everything working. So if is member is true, I actually want to display not a member yet. And then if the user is not a member, then we'll say already a member, and we'll add a question mark. And then the same thing goes over here with a member button, where again, I want to set up my ternary operator. And if the user is a member, then register. If not, then login. So values, then is member. And then let's go with our ternary, and then let's say register. And also we have a login option. And once we save it, notice the reason why we went here with opposite values is because I'm signaling that I'm going to be switching to a register, correct? And if that is the case, then I want to display not a member. However, if the user is looking at the register option and he or she is already a member, well, it kind of makes sense to display that text, correct? And in here, I'm signaling that we'll switch to a login. And this one is pretty straightforward. And it looks like I forgot to add here a question mark. So let me add that one. And with this in place, now we can toggle is member property in the state. And in the process, we're changing the values in heading 3. We are toggling the name input, as well as the text inside of the paragraph and member button.